Welcome back to Voices in Health and Wellness. This is the podcast where we spotlight the innovators, leaders, and disruptors shaping the future of care. Today, we're joined by Dr. Kristen Dickerson, founder and CEO of Green Imaging, a pioneering radiology service offering high-quality, affordable medical imaging with full price transparency. Dr. Dickerson launched Green Imaging with a bold idea. What if you could remove the middlemen, lower costs, and still offer world-class care? And over the past decade, she's done exactly that, building a nationwide imaging network that's helping patients, employers, and healthcare workers alike rethink how diagnostic imaging is delivered and paid for. So, Kristen, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to have a great conversation.
Thank you. So maybe we could start at the top. Can you talk a little bit about the origin of Green Imaging and what inspired you to start the company?
Sure. It was really that I had a problem in my community, which turned out to be a national problem. But that was that there wasn't affordable medical imaging. The chain of imaging centers that was operating in network was purchased by a hospital system, and the price of outpatient imaging tripled overnight. And I was running a radiology group. We were reading for imaging centers that were operating out of network because they could not survive on the in-network rates. And they were at 50% capacity. So opening another imaging center wasn't going to solve the problem. I was going to have the same problems these centers did. So Travelocity and a lot of the kind of shared facility models were emerging at that point in time. And so I explored the Stark laws, and because radiologists are not referring physicians, we're considered consultants under the Stark laws because we are not the referring physician for the patients that we read the exams for. We're able to do unique relationships with imaging centers. We're able to do per-click lease arrangements. And so I was able to construct leases with the imaging centers that I was reading for that were at half capacity, send my patients there by the unused time on their scanners, send my patients there for the scan, and kind of flipped radiology on its head. Traditionally, an imaging center would buy the interpretation from the radiologist and bill for the scan and the interpretation, bill globally. And so we decided we would do the opposite. We would buy the scan from the imaging center, read the study, and bill globally and share the savings with self-pay patients. And really, most people in this country should be a self-pay patient. 90% of people are never going to meet their deductible. And so they should be negotiating the fairest price possible for themselves. And at that point in time, we had a very, very high uninsured rate in Texas as well. And so, I proved concept with self-pay patients, but I had been a self-funded employer, and I always knew this could be great in the employer space. And, what people don't realize is that Blue Cross Blue Shield card does not mean that Blue Cross Blue Shield is paying for that study and they're insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield. Most of the time, it's their employer who's paying for the study. And so employers are getting smart and starting to put solutions in place to save money as well.
Fascinating. So lots of efficiencies in what you've done in terms of maximizing capacity at certain centers, just to all of these things to try and make things more affordable for the patients.
Right.
Got it. So what does a typical day look like for you as CEO of Green Imaging? If there is such thing as a typical day, and I dare say there isn't.
There really isn't. It varies a lot, but I am still a practicing radiologist. So this morning, I was reading stat exams and reading my routine studies. But a lot of the time it's going out and educating people. That's really what I do. I just spent 3 days in Denver with the Health Rosetta Conference, which is a conference for health benefits advisors and for employers who want to make changes. They want to boot United Healthcare out the window and start taking on healthcare themselves. And so I spoke at that conference, spoke to thousands of people and to doctors. They had the HINT conference as well there. Subscription-based primary care is booming in this country. Doctors from all specialties are going in and doing subscription-based care. So they were in Denver as well. And so really spent 3 days with my community, but that's a lot of what I do all day, is talking to employers, talking to benefits advisors, talking to people who want to change the way that they acquire care. And so a lot of it's just education.
Interesting. And how has your role evolved over the years as the business has grown? I mean, obviously you're in a CEO capacity and you've been doing this for 10 plus years. How has your role changed?
This was really a side gig for me. I was a full-time radiologist until 2020. And full-time as a physician is more than full-time, as you know.
Mm.
So I was, did this kind of nights and weekends, and, really had to subsidize it by being a full-time radiologist. When it became clear we were going to be able to do this nationally in 2020, and COVID came around, and the world kind of changed, I decided I was going to take the leap and be full-time with Green Imaging. And so that's when I really, had the time to get out and start traveling and go to these conferences and educate people. I'm on Zoom calls all day, talking to benefits advisors and HR directors for companies and CFOs of companies, and talking, educating them about a different way to acquire healthcare for their employees.
Fascinating. What major shifts are you seeing in the medical imaging or healthcare space more generally right now?
There are a lot. There are a lot of economic factors going on. Number one, the biggest concern for everybody should be 65% of Texans are delaying care or just not getting care because they can't afford it. That's been going on for a while, but that's up from about 40, 45, 50% a few years ago. That is huge. And so I think that's the biggest economic force going on right now. The other is that employers are paying more than anybody on the planet, US employers, to acquire healthcare that's not getting better for people. And they're not able to touch that healthcare. Their deductibles are so high that by the time they pay their premium, they don't have money left to pay for care. And the dirty secret is they don't have to do that. And I'm seeing employers all over the country actually able to provide care at zero out of pocket for their employees and still save money from what they were spending with the traditional networks. And in imaging specifically, it is the private equity acquisition of imaging centers and radiology groups. And the result there, several factors there. Hospitals are having, with the first factor I discussed, hospitals are having to increase the price of their imaging so they can try to get to the health plan above the deductible, because patients can't afford the study. They're collecting 26 cents on the dollar from patients. Private equity acquisition of imaging centers means a friend of mine sold some centers in Houston to a large chain of imaging centers. He said his EBITDA tripled overnight. What he could make from the center tripled overnight because their contracted rates were so much higher than his. That also means that everybody, who hasn't met their deductible, when they go to that imaging center that used to have really fair prices, they had fair cash prices and fair contracted rates. Now, when they go there, they're going to have a surprise bill because the rates have tripled overnight. And then the acquisition of radiology groups means that the surprise bill that people used to get in November, December from the radiology group that they didn't know they were going to get a bill from, actually may be as high as the facility bill. We're seeing the professional fees have just dramatic, same reason they're aggregating contracts, bigger groups can negotiate, get more leverage with the payers. And so again, that surprise bill may be as high as the bill for the scan itself.
I guess your operation must look fairly attractive to a private equity group. Is this something you'd be trying to kind of avoid and hang on to this yourself? Or what's your kind of take on this?
Yeah, I mean, there are private equity groups that are trying to pull together solutions that can hold down costs and replace the traditional system. That's not something I'm interested in right now. We're 100% radiologist owned and operated. I own 90% of the company, and we're completely bootstrapped. But at some point, the financial risk of that just becomes overwhelming. And our need to automate, our need to, AI is not, and that's another point of discussion always, is AI and imaging. But, all of the things that we need to do to automate, to streamline this and hold down cost, ultimately costs are an investment. And so, at some point I will need investors, but they got to be the right kind of investors. That's very clear. We've stayed clear of that for a long time, intentionally.
And thinking about, your clients, I mean, how have millennials and Gen Z clients changed the way you approach the patient experience?
It's very interesting. We feel like we have to take clients in whatever communication mode they want. My mom wants to call, I want to email, and my son wants to text. And that's just the way it is. And so we have multimodal intake for imaging orders. And, it literally is, some people just want, to talk to somebody who speaks their language on the phone. And we found that during COVID, our average phone call doubled in length. And fortunately, our volume had decreased by 50%. So we were able to accommodate that. But it's very interesting. When people are under healthcare stress, they really want a real person. And that even includes that our web chat is manned by real people. It's not bots. It's not, AI. It is real people responding to people. So we feel like there are a lot of different ways. And the younger people, a lot of the process, the entire process can be handled by secure text. So even our older people usually will receive a text on their phone, but a young person just basically takes a snapshot of their order and their benefits card, texts it to our main number. That starts the referral process, and they'll have a voucher on their phone, gives them the date and time of the exam, the address of the facility, and any prep needed for the exam.
And what has green imaging had to do to adapt to these kind of requirements from your clients? You've talked about various modes of communication, particularly young people wanting texting, all those kind of things. If you had to put things into place to cater for these demands?
It's really cybersecurity that is what we're having to adapt to. I can't tell you how many times a day we get attempted cybersecurity threats. We are we've been SOC 2 audited, SOC 2 Type 2, which is even a higher level. Audited, not because we're a company that size that should have to do that, but because we are aggregating data, health, PHI, and we feel a responsibility to do that. And so, it's really, I think, the expensive and the hard part of doing this is, being loose enough to accept people communicating with us in all different ways, but tight on the cybersecurity. So that's really the challenge there.
Got it. And do you see the sort of generational demands as temporary trends or part of a broader lasting transformation in what you do?
I think it's a broader lasting transformation, although when people are under healthcare stress, and they are, even if they're having a screening study, having a screening mammogram, one of the best day of the year is when you get your normal screening mammogram result. So even if people are getting what we consider minor testing done, they're under stress when they reach out to us. And so it's really keeping, to me, how do we communicate succinctly, in a frictionless way, and still have the warmth that human beings need. And that to me is the challenge. I don't think people are going to read the whole text anymore ever again. They're never going to read prose, but I think this proneness we have to everything moving fast will continue. But I still think in healthcare, number one, we have to restore trust in healthcare. It's gone away. And so when people's employers put green imaging in place, they're always skeptical. This is just a cost containment, something. So we have to get past that. We have to let them know we're real people who really care about them and are really going to take great care of them. And so we have to amp that piece of it up so much to get past the brevity that everybody wants and needs.
Thank you. And I'm thinking about the green imaging as a business. What's working really well for you in the company from your perspective and your team's perspective?
I really think it's the human touch. If you look at our Google reviews, we have 4.8 Google stars, despite the fact we're practicing healthcare, which does not always go perfectly. And I think, if you look at those and read them and see how appreciative people are they call our concierge shop by name over and over again. And I think that's really the difference. You can use an app to go find an inexpensive place to get imaging. Now, we don't want to be the cheapest place to get imaging. We want the imaging centers to want our patients. We want them to take great care of our patients, open evenings and weekends for our patients when we have a large group in a tightly geographically aggregated area. But anybody can find an imaging center. It's the piece on top of it, the being cared for. and then not having to hang on the phone for an hour to get an auth and to get your appointment taken care of. Those are the things that I think really make a difference.
Well, congratulations on achieving those kind of reviews, because that's very powerful. We all know the power of the Google review. And similarly, what's been particularly frustrating or challenging in what you do?
It's the variation in how claims are processed. I mean, every doctor on the planet understands this. You know, the billing issues with we did originally, we just did invoices to our employers and to our TPAs, but it became clear to scale we had to do EDI, which is, you know, the electronic way that claims are processed in this country. And you know, we are not contracted with who we call the BUCAs, the Blue Cross Blue Shield, United, Cigna, Aetna plans, intentionally. That's just, that didn't work in my old life. I hated it. And so, you know, we're not contracted with those. But the independent TPAs are as challenged or as have as difficult a time processing claims correctly as the larger ones do. And so I think the real frustration has been, again, you know, just like in a traditional practice, it's getting paid.
And from another sort of business perspective, I guess there are a number of metrics that you're particularly interested in. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of things that you pay particular attention to, and perhaps the things that you're most interested in improving?
Yeah, you know, number one is our net promoter score, you know, how we're doing with patients, how, you know, would patients recommend us to friends and family? That's first and foremost. Our other metrics are, you know, how quickly we can get patients, you know, access to care right now is a big problem. How quickly we can get people scheduled. Can we get them scheduled at our preferred sites? You know, do we have enough preferred sites that we've got great workflows with, that we're using on a daily basis, that really appreciate us, you know, help us hold down costs, take great care of our patients, hold spots on Friday afternoon for us so that if we have a staff, we can keep somebody out of the ER. Those are all things that really matter to us. You know, from a financial standpoint, you know, obviously their metrics, you know, we've got it there, you know, you can't have a mission without a margin. And so, you know, trying to keep the kind of, you know, 10% margin going so that we can continue to grow and take care of our employees, you know, is of course critical for any medical practice, and challenging. Those are the things that matter.
Brilliant. And which are your sort of biggest bottlenecks right now in terms of what's going on in the business?
I would say there's certain geographic areas that are really, really challenging for us when they're hospital dominant. The Northeast is a challenge for us geographically, largely hospital based. They've maintained great reimbursement with the payers because their patients are more spread out geographically, and there are very few independent imaging centers in those areas. Boston has been a challenge for us. It's really made Wisconsin has been a challenge for us. It's geographies where it's challenging to find facilities for our patients.
If you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in the business tomorrow, and we'll take billing as a given because that's a kind of universal thing to North America, what would that thing be?
Chaos. The dramatic variations in how healthcare is provided. I saw a statistic yesterday, or I heard a statistic yesterday, that it's not just what it's costing employers directly to provide healthcare for their employees. It is the time their employees have to spend away from work to acquire healthcare. That there's a second cost, and that is how much time they have to spend acquiring healthcare in the current system, and it's all because of the chaos and the barriers that are put in front of patients to acquire care.
Interesting. We'll maybe talk about growth in a moment, but I was going to ask if you had a sudden influx of new leads or clients. Obviously, a nice problem to have, but what would break first in your system?
What would break first? Probably geography. Yeah, and we do have a huge influx coming in for the end of this year and the beginning of next year. The challenge is geographic build out of the network, and not just geographic build out. our original model where we read the studies is the best because we control the images and the reports. And access to images and reports is a problem for doctors across the country. Getting reports auto-faxed to them, they don't come a lot of the time. Even if you look at a doctor's prescription pad, a lot of times the fax number that's on there is not the one where they really want the reports going, and it goes into a dark hole. And so access to images and reports is a challenge. And so really our getting back to our original model where we read the most of the studies is critical for us, and a limiting factor. And we'll get there. It's just to get big and to have enough facilities to do this nationally, we had to serve as more of a traditional network, even though it's still our radiologists who are protocoling the exams. It's our radiologists who are, if there's ever a question of quality, we're going in there and looking at it. We're reading about 43% of the exams right now, and we need to get back up to, 75 probably is realistic, and control those images and reports. And that is, what keeps things slick and moving nicely.
I hear you. Is there a creative fix for this geography problem that you've mentioned, or are you just really stuck with where things are in space? I'm just trying to get a sense of what the creative solution for this is.
Well, I think hospitals are starting to listen to us. We're starting to have a really good value prop for hospitals. When I built this, I had owned 5 imaging centers, and so I know their pain points, including hospitals. We provide clean radiologist protocoled orders. There's no author verification on their part. We pay their fair price, and we pay them promptly. And so we answer a lot of the pain points. And for hospitals right now, it's trying to collect from patients. So if I can get the right person at a hospital, I can usually convince them to work with us. And we've done that. We have some really great relationships in Texas now with hospitals. We have Baptist in San Antonio. We have Ascension in Waco. We're about to work with Ascension in Temple. We work with Oak Bend in Richmond, Texas. We really are starting to get those relationships rolling. I think that will solve our problem down the line. It's getting to the right person at the hospital, and they're having open ears. But if I get to them, I can convince them that this is a better way to do things.
I hear you. I mean, you've been doing this for about 10 years now. And if you were starting your business again tomorrow, what would you do differently with everything that you know and everything that you've been through?
Gosh, I don't know. Resilience is such it so drives doing things better that I don't know that I'd trade anything or do anything differently. It really did take walking this path and really learning I guess I would have learned the mechanics of healthcare better, of how healthcare payment systems work, how third-party administrators work, how stop loss works, the catastrophic coverage that employers put behind their plans. I think I have become a benefits advisor just in self-defense, and I probably would have done that. And now I was actually managing partner of a big multi-specialty group early in my career, so I already knew the traditional system pretty well. But it's really once you get into the mechanics of an individual health plan, where had I had that knowledge earlier, we would have averted some problems.
Thank you. It sounds like you run a fairly streamlined operation, but are there anywhere areas that you feel like you're perhaps behind the curve? I don't know whether aspects of technology, operations, or marketing. Is there anything that you feel that you have to catch up on?
If any, I would say automation, except we're very cautious there. One of the things we're learning, kind of the first round of radiology AI has failed. And I was very skeptical about going into the interpretive part of AI. We have no investment there because we've all been through the computer-aided detection. Medicare's paid billions of dollars for mammography computer-aided detection that does nothing more than an experienced radiologist can do. And so I've gone into that very skeptically. Now, we have used AI where we can, nothing patient facing, but we've used it. I use it to organize my radiology report. So I never have to take my eyes off of the images. I can dictate, and it puts it in the proper order. Of course, I oversee that, but I use that to add, it adds maybe 15% efficiency and time to my work, but the hassle factor, and I think my ability to interpret and not be interrupted, never taking my eyes off to go make sure I'm in the right place on the report, is really, really helpful. Even if it didn't add the efficiency, I think I would use it for that reason. So we're watching very carefully. Now, I do know that when we applied for our malpractice this year, they were going to ding us for using any interpretive AI. We were going to have a higher rate because they're experiencing malpractice issues with some of these. So I think I'm not going to say we're behind the curve on that. We're watching it very skeptically, and we will jump in when we find solutions that we think really benefit ourselves as physicians and our patients.
Got it. As CEO, what keeps you up at night when it comes to the future of green imaging? Maybe nothing, but I just wondered if there's anything that kind of stirs you in your sleep as a manager in your business.
Sure. Growing too fast and not being able to take care of people optimally. That's my fear. There's a lot of interest in what we're doing right now. And, we're just having to, kind of even going to this conference was we had so much influx of people interested in new business, and we pretty much have our channels full for next year. So, it's how do we balance that, keep people interested and optimistic for change, but scale it smartly, intelligently.
I hear you. What about the future? So where would you like green imaging to be in 6 to 12 months time? Is it around the growth thing, or are there other things that you've kind of got your eye on for the future?
For me, it would be getting patients through the pipeline as more quickly, being able to really take on, we've had about 30% growth year over year in patient care, being able to add 50%, 70%, so we can help more people would be lovely.
Wonderful. Kristen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been a really interesting conversation hearing about what you do at Green Imaging, the model that you have and how it's so different from what other people are doing, and your very honest and informed description of how you do your thing. It's really, really interesting. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure other people will be interested to hear what you have to say. And we'll put your sort of contact details on the bio page of the podcast. So anybody who wants to get in touch or find out more will be able to do so. But thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.